What if I told you that one of America's most celebrated psychics discovered a truth about single women that would shock society to its core? A truth so profound that it challenges everything we think we know about relationships, spirituality, and the very purpose of the feminine soul. Edgar Cayce, known as the Sleeping Prophet, delivered over 14,000 documented psychic readings during his lifetime. But among all his revelations about health, spirituality, and human potential, perhaps none were more controversial than his insights about women who choose to live alone. Stay with me, because what you're about to discover will change how you view every single woman you know. According to Edgar Cayce, there's something happening in the spiritual realm when a woman lives independently, something that most people never recognize. But before we dive into this shocking revelation, let me ask you something that might make you uncomfortable. Have you ever wondered why society seems so threatened by women who are complete on their own? Why there's this persistent pressure for every woman to find her other half? Edgar Cayce said the answer lies not in our social conditioning, but in ancient spiritual laws that govern human consciousness itself. Edgar Cayce discovered that the human soul incarnates with specific purposes, lessons to learn, and karmic debts to resolve. Through his readings, he revealed that some souls, particularly feminine souls, come into this lifetime with a very special mission that actually requires periods of solitude and independence. But here's where it gets shocking. According to Edgar Cayce, women who live alone without a man aren't missing something, they're accessing something. Something so powerful that it threatens the very foundations of how we organize society. And you won't believe what this something actually is. Edgar Cayce said that when a woman removes herself from the traditional dynamic of seeking completion through a masculine partner, she begins to activate what he called her divine feminine consciousness. This isn't just feel-good spiritual talk. According to Cayce's readings, this represents an actual shift in psychic and spiritual abilities. In reading 262-10, Edgar Cayce explained that the feminine principle, when not filtered through the need for external validation or completion, becomes a direct channel for what he termed universal wisdom. He discovered that women living independently often develop heightened intuition, prophetic abilities, and a deeper connection to the Akashic records, the universal database of all knowledge and experience. But wait, there's something even more shocking coming. Here's what Edgar Cayce discovered that will blow your mind. Society's pressure on women to couple isn't just cultural, it's actually a form of spiritual interference. According to Edgar Cayce, there are forces, both seen and unseen, that benefit from keeping the divine feminine energy diluted and dependent. When women tap into their complete spiritual power through independence, they become what he called dangerous to the established order. But dangerous how? And to whom? Edgar Cayce said that throughout history, truly powerful civilizations understood and honored the independent feminine spiritual force. In ancient Egypt, temple priestesses who remained unmarried were considered the most spiritually advanced beings in society. They were the oracles, the healers, the keepers of sacred knowledge. According to Edgar Cayce's readings on past lives, many souls who lived as these powerful priestesses are incarnating now as modern women who feel an inexplicable pull toward independence. They're not afraid of being alone, they're actually afraid of losing their spiritual connection by becoming too dependent on others. But here's the part that will really shock you. Edgar Cayce discovered that women who live alone without a man don't just develop psychic abilities, they actually begin to remember their past lives more clearly. And what they remember changes everything about how they see relationships, society, and their purpose on earth. What are they remembering? And why is this memory so threatening to the status quo? According to Edgar Cayce, independent women often begin accessing memories of lifetimes where they held positions of incredible spiritual authority. They remember being oracles at Delphi, priestesses in Atlantis, medicine women in indigenous tribes, and mystics in medieval convents. Edgar Cayce said these memories aren't just fantasies, they're actual soul records that become accessible when a woman's consciousness isn't being constantly influenced by the need to maintain harmony in a romantic relationship. In reading 295-6, Cayce explained that when we're deeply enmeshed in romantic partnerships, our psychic abilities often become clouded by emotional entanglements. But when a woman chooses solitude, she can access what he called her soul's true frequency. But here's what Edgar Cayce couldn't have predicted in his time: the massive wave of women choosing independence in the 21st century represents what he would have called a collective spiritual awakening. According to Edgar Cayce's principles, we're witnessing the return of the divine feminine in its most powerful form, not as the complement to masculine energy, but as a complete spiritual force in its own right. And this awakening is triggering something that will reshape human consciousness itself. Edgar Cayce said that when enough individuals raise their consciousness, it creates what he called a vibrational shift that affects all of humanity. The growing number of women choosing to live independently represents exactly this kind of shift. According to Edgar Cayce's understanding of group consciousness, these women aren't just making personal choices, they're actually anchoring a new level of spiritual awareness for the entire planet. But there's resistance to this awakening, and it's coming from places you'd never expect. Edgar Cayce discovered that spiritual evolution is never smooth, there are always forces that resist change. And the resistance to women's spiritual independence is coming from three specific sources that he identified in his readings. The first source will surprise you, the second will shock you, and the third will make you question everything you think you know about relationships. According to Edgar Cayce, the first source of resistance comes from what he called lower vibrational entities, spiritual forces that feed off dependency, fear, and emotional drama. Independent women are literally starving these entities by refusing to engage in the emotional chaos that often characterizes codependent relationships. The second source Edgar Cayce identified is even more surprising: other women who haven't awakened to their own spiritual independence. Cayce explained that seeing another woman complete and happy alone triggers deep unconscious fears about their own choices and capabilities. But the third source is the most shocking of all. Edgar Cayce said the third source of resistance comes from the collective unconscious itself, the shared psychic field that contains all of humanity's beliefs, fears, and patterns. For thousands of years, this field has been programmed with the belief that women need men for completion, safety, and purpose. According to Edgar Cayce, when a woman breaks free from this programming, she creates what he called cracks in the matrix of collective belief. These cracks allow new possibilities to emerge, but they also trigger a defensive response from the old programming. But here's the incredible part: these cracks are exactly what humanity needs for its next evolutionary leap. What if I told you that according to Edgar Cayce, women who live alone without men aren't just making lifestyle choices, they're actually fulfilling a specific evolutionary purpose for humanity itself? Edgar Cayce discovered that evolution isn't just physical, it's also spiritual and psychic. And the next stage of human evolution requires what he called the integration of complete feminine wisdom into our collective consciousness. The women pioneering this path are literally paving the way for a new form of human awareness. In his readings about the future of humanity, Edgar Cayce spoke of a time when human consciousness would undergo a dramatic shift. He said this shift would be characterized by the emergence of what he called spiritually sovereign individuals, people who derive their sense of completeness from their connection to divine source rather than from external relationships. According to Edgar Cayce, the women choosing independence today are the pioneers of this new consciousness. They're demonstrating that it's possible to be whole, fulfilled, and spiritually connected without depending on another person for completion. But here's what's really mind-blowing about this prophecy. Edgar Cayce said that every person who achieves spiritual sovereignty creates ripples that affect everyone around them. Women who are complete on their own don't just change their own lives, they actually raise the standards for how all relationships function. And this ripple effect is creating changes in men that Edgar Cayce predicted would be essential for humanity's survival. According to Edgar Cayce, when women stop looking to men for completion, it forces men to develop their own inner wholeness. Instead of being sought for security, protection, or identity, men must discover their own spiritual purpose and connection to the divine. Edgar Cayce said this creates what he called spiritually mature partnerships, where two complete individuals choose to share their journey rather than two incomplete people trying to fill each other's voids. But this transition isn't always smooth, and Edgar Cayce warned of specific challenges that would arise. Edgar Cayce issued a warning about this transitional period that we're living through right now. He said that as more women claim their spiritual independence, there would be a period of confusion, resistance, and even backlash from those who benefit from the old system. But he also gave specific guidance for navigating this transition that could be the key to your own spiritual evolution. Edgar Cayce said that women going through this awakening to spiritual independence would face three main challenges. First, they would have to overcome their own conditioning about needing a man for completeness. This conditioning, according to Cayce, goes deeper than social programming. It's actually embedded in what he called cellular memory, from lifetimes of dependence. Second, they would face external pressure from family, friends, and society to find someone and settle down. Edgar Cayce said this pressure would intensify as their spiritual power grows, because others unconsciously sense the threat to the old paradigm. Third, and most challengingly, they would have to learn to trust their own inner guidance over external validation, something Edgar Cayce said requires tremendous spiritual courage. But for those who successfully navigate these challenges, Edgar Cayce discovered that women who fully embrace their spiritual independence don't just gain freedom. They gain access to what he called the divine feminine mysteries. These are ancient spiritual teachings and abilities that can only be activated when a woman is truly complete within herself. What are these mysteries? And how do they change everything about a woman's life? According to Edgar Cayce, the divine feminine mysteries include the ability to heal others through pure intention and energy work. Cayce said that independent women often develop spontaneous healing abilities because they're not dissipating their energy in emotional drama or codependent relationships. Prophetic dreams and visions that provide guidance not just for themselves but for their communities. Edgar Cayce explained that when a woman's psychic channels aren't clouded by romantic entanglement, she becomes a clear receiver for universal wisdom. The power to manifest desired outcomes through what Cayce called aligned intention. He said that women who know their own completeness can create from a place of wholeness rather than neediness, making their manifestations far more powerful. But the most incredible mystery of all is still coming. Edgar Cayce discovered that women who achieve true spiritual independence gain access to what he called the creative force of the universe itself. But this isn't just metaphorical language. According to Cayce's readings, these women literally become co-creators with divine consciousness. And what they're creating will transform the entire future of human civilization. According to Edgar Cayce, spiritually independent women become what he termed conscious channels for divine will. They begin to receive inspiration for inventions, healing modalities, artistic expressions, and social innovations that serve humanity's highest good. Edgar Cayce said that many of the breakthrough discoveries and creative works throughout history actually came through women who were spiritually complete within themselves, though their contributions were often attributed to others or hidden by the social structures of their time. But in our current era, Cayce predicted, these women would finally be recognized and supported in their role as conscious co-creators of human evolution. Edgar Cayce gave specific timing for when this transformation would reach its peak. He said that between 2020 and 2040, humanity would witness what he called the rise of the sovereign feminine, a period when women's spiritual independence would become not just accepted but essential for solving global challenges. We're living in that timeline right now. And if you're a woman feeling drawn to independence, or if you know women who are choosing this path. According to Edgar Cayce's timeline predictions, we're at the crucial tipping point right now. The women choosing independence today are the pioneers who are establishing new templates for human consciousness. Edgar Cayce said that every woman who chooses spiritual sovereignty makes it easier for the next woman to make the same choice. They're literally changing the morphic field, the invisible field of information that influences all living beings. But here's what Edgar Cayce said would be the ultimate test of this transformation. Edgar Cayce predicted that the ultimate test of women's spiritual independence would come when they're presented with opportunities for traditional partnership. He said that truly awakened women would be able to choose partnership from wholeness rather than neediness, and that this choice would determine the success of humanity's evolutionary leap. This test is happening right now, and its outcome will determine the future of human consciousness itself. According to Edgar Cayce, the paradox of spiritual independence is that it ultimately prepares women for partnership at the highest level, but only with men who have also achieved their own spiritual sovereignty. Edgar Cayce said that when two spiritually complete individuals come together, they create what he called a third consciousness, a shared awareness that's greater than the sum of its parts. This third consciousness, according to Cayce, is capable of accessing spiritual truths and creative solutions that neither individual could reach alone. But this level of partnership is only possible between people who don't need each other, who choose each other from love and purpose rather than from fear and dependency. Edgar Cayce had visions of humanity's future that directly relate to what we're seeing with women's independence today. He saw communities where relationships were based on spiritual purpose rather than emotional dependency, where children were raised by spiritually sovereign adults, and where the feminine wisdom was honored as essential for planetary healing. But he also saw potential timelines where this transformation fails. And the determining factor is. According to Edgar Cayce, the success of this consciousness shift depends on whether enough women have the courage to trust their inner guidance over social pressure. He said that for every woman who fully embraces her spiritual independence, the probability of humanity's successful evolution increases exponentially. But Cayce also warned that the resistance to this change would intensify as more women awakened to their power. He predicted that there would be attempts to shame women back into dependency through fear campaigns, economic pressure, and even spiritual manipulation. The key, Edgar Cayce said, is for awakening women to support each other and to remember that their independence serves not just themselves, but all of humanity. Here's what Edgar Cayce said every woman needs to know: if you feel drawn to spiritual independence, it's not a selfish impulse, it's actually your soul responding to humanity's evolutionary need. Edgar Cayce discovered that souls incarnate with specific missions, and many women alive today came here specifically to pioneer this new consciousness. Their discomfort with traditional relationships isn't a personal failing, it's their soul's wisdom guiding them toward their true purpose. But there's one more shocking truth that Edgar Cayce revealed about these pioneering women. Edgar Cayce said that many of the women choosing independence today are actually advanced souls who have incarnated from higher dimensions specifically to anchor new consciousness on Earth. They're not learning how to be independent. They're remembering how to be spiritually sovereign beings. According to Edgar Cayce, these souls volunteered for what he called the most challenging mission possible, to break free from thousands of years of conditioning and establish new templates for human consciousness. But here's the incredible part: Edgar Cayce said that their success is guaranteed because they carry within their cellular memory the blueprint for spiritual sovereignty that exists in humanity's future. According to Edgar Cayce, every woman who feels called to independence carries within her DNA the memory of humanity's eventual evolution into spiritually sovereign beings. This is why the path feels both terrifying and inevitable: it's their soul remembering the future they came here to create. Edgar Cayce said that when these women trust their inner guidance over external pressure, they're not just making personal choices, they're actually downloading the future of human consciousness into the present moment. Edgar Cayce predicted that the women pioneering spiritual independence today will be remembered as the founding mothers of a new era of human consciousness. But their greatest legacy won't be their independence itself, it will be the children they raise and influence who will grow up knowing that spiritual sovereignty is possible. These children, according to Edgar Cayce, will be the bridge generation between our current consciousness and humanity's evolutionary future. Edgar Cayce said that children raised by spiritually independent women, whether as single mothers or in sovereign partnerships, would develop capabilities that seem almost supernatural by today's standards. They would have natural psychic abilities, intuitive wisdom, and an unshakable connection to divine guidance. But more importantly, they would never question their own completeness or seek external validation for their worth. They would incarnate already knowing what the current generation of women is struggling to remember. So here's the shocking truth that Edgar Cayce discovered about women who live alone without a man: they're not missing anything, they're accessing everything. They're not incomplete, they're pioneering completeness for all of humanity. Every woman who chooses spiritual independence is participating in the greatest evolutionary leap in human history. They're not selfish or afraid of commitment, they're courageously committed to humanity's highest potential. Edgar Cayce said that future generations would look back at this time and recognize these women as the heroes who broke the chains of consciousness that had held humanity in limitation for millennia. The pressure they feel to conform, the loneliness they sometimes experience, the judgment they face, all of this is the natural resistance that occurs whenever consciousness attempts to evolve to a higher level. But their success is not just personal, it's planetary. Every woman who claims her spiritual sovereignty makes it easier for the next woman to do the same. They're literally changing the morphic field of human consciousness itself. If you're a woman who feels called to this path, Edgar Cayce would want you to know, your independence isn't a phase to grow out of, it's a mission to grow into. You're not waiting for your life to begin when you find the right partner, you're living the very purpose you came here to fulfill. And if you know women who are choosing this path, understand that you're witnessing something unprecedented in human history, the conscious evolution of feminine consciousness from dependence to divine sovereignty. Edgar Cayce saw this transformation coming over 80 years ago. He knew that humanity's survival depended on the feminine principle reclaiming its full power. The women living this truth today are the fulfillment of his most hopeful prophecy for humanity's future. The shocking truth isn't that some women choose to live without men, the shocking truth is that by making this choice, they're choosing to live for all of humanity's potential. This is Edgar Cayce's ultimate message about women's spiritual independence. It's not the end of partnership, it's the beginning of partnership at the highest level. It's not the rejection of love, it's the embodiment of love in its most complete form. The women walking this path today are writing the story of humanity's future. And according to Edgar Cayce, that future is more beautiful than we can imagine. Remember this, every time you see a woman thriving in her independence, you're witnessing prophecy in action. You're seeing the future of human consciousness taking form in the present moment. Edgar Cayce would have said you're witnessing nothing less than the divine feminine awakening to claim her rightful place in the evolution of human awareness. And that awakening changes everything. For women, for men, for children, and for the entire future of life on Earth. Thank you so much for staying with me through this exploration. If you found value in today's discussion, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share this video with someone who might benefit from it.